Welcome to Shardcast, the Brandon Sanderson podcast. We're a bunch of mega fans giving you the news, discussion, and of course a whole lot of opinions about Brandon's works in the Cosmere. I'm Eric, and joining me is someone on a new laptop with new webcam, but same lag, is Matt.
Hey everyone, I'm Matt, or Comatose on the forums, and hopefully the lag is not too bad.
Look, yeah. Also joining me, someone who has not reread Mistborn Era 1 in a long time, is Grace.
Hi, gracing your YouTube screens is I, the Gator Girl.
To be fair, I haven't done a Mistborn 1 reread in a long time, a Mistborn Era 1 reread in a long time, so today we are going to talk about the Lord Ruler. I was inspired during the Skyward tour, getting angry about the Lord Ruler's children. And I said, we're going to have a Lord Ruler podcast. And then it looks like there's going to be multiple Lord Ruler podcasts, because this document is very long.
To all of you who think we do too much Roshar stuff,
yeah,
this is for you.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, the Lord Ruler is an extremely interesting character. There's a lot of depth to him. He's lived for over 1,000 years, so there's lots to talk about. So this week, we're going to talk about his character and history, and less on the magical mechanics stuff that he does, although that is crazy as well.
And to some extent, I think it does inform like his character and who he is too, so we might touch.
Yeah, but we're not going to be
not
like, let's talk
mechanics. Yeah,
let's talk about compounding in like extreme detail. Don't worry, we'll do that eventually. And Grace is like, I'm noping out, and we'll get Evgeny and Ian, and then it'll be great. We'll pedantic it up, as per usual. So, you know what, Matt? I think we should go to the very beginning. The first time we heard the name Roshar, because spoilers for Mistborn 1, by the way. In Mistborn Era 1, the Lord Ruler is Roshar.
Yeah.
that's kind of the central reveal of that book.
Yeah.
And he's a ferrochemist. And well, let's just talk about his character. And we grabbed all the epigraphs that he's in. And I was immediately shocked that the first time he was mentioned, Lendy is writing in his journal that Roshar has a lot of charisma, and women of the court would probably describe him as handsome in a rugged sort of way. I totally forgot this.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because I think there's some assumption once you learn what the Lord Ruler did, because he's always described as very handsome, right?
Right.
But I think there's an assumption by some that he recreated himself to be more good looking, or that just culture evolved to consider the Lord Ruler's characteristics as like the epitome of beauty, since he's God
in charge.
Right?
Yeah. You look great.
But the fact that, the fact that he was considered handsome, at least by Clenny standards, before his ascension, I think is interesting. And I think that's probably one of Brandon's clues, describing Roshar and the Lord Ruler with the same adjective.
Yes.
Is likely one of the things he sprinkled in there.
Yeah. But he also is very hateful and hates Clenium a lot.
Yeah.
And apparently there's a lot of Terris who just don't like the Clenny stuff.
Specifically the younger generation. They're like a more rebellious crowd. He provides an interesting counterpoint as well. Roshar does, even before he's the Lord Ruler, to Sazed, I think. Because Sazed is so like the epitome of like a Terris person for most people, right? Because he's the main one we see, and he's so peaceful, and he understands different viewpoints, and he tries to be, accepting of difference. Whereas the Lord Ruler is really a zealot in a lot of ways, or like a activist for Terris supremacy. So he's very different.
Yeah. He doesn't think that a foreigner could be hero of ages.
Yeah.
He turned out to be kind of right on that.
Yeah.
Hey. There is actually an interesting epigraph where Alendi's like, Roshar doesn't understand that really the prophecies say that the Hero of Ages will be an outsider, but not really quite the same there.
Mm-hmm.
But it is interesting that he hated Klenium. Quan says Roshar hates all of Klenium with the passion of envious youth. He hates Alendi even more acutely. For Roshar feels betrayed that one of our oppressors should have been chosen as the Hero of Ages, which is interesting that people felt that the Terris were oppressed, particularly by Klenium and presumably Alendi.
Well, and I think also Roshar, there's a lot of ties to that, to their power and their Feruchemy. You know, I think the way Brandon portrays it is the Terris culture back then was still very rural and like removed, whereas Klenium is portrayed as kind of a power center in the, what was it you found, Eric? The 14 lands?
The 14 lands!
A center of power in the 14 lands. And so I think Roshar, because this was pre, widespread allomancy, it was very rare and not really understood. So, like, I think, Roshar seeing, like, we have these Feruchemists, we have these amazing abilities. Why are we the backwater when we could be, a central power like Klenium?
Yeah, and although it is interesting that, even though the Terris were very removed, their religion spread.
Quan
was mentioning the 14 lands.
Yeah. I kind of think of it like, like sometimes Eastern spirituality or religion, an aspect of that will get super trendy here. And, it'll be people like misinterpreting it or whatever, but it'll all of a sudden catch on as like a new fad. I can kind of see that happening with like, the Terris prophecies, when the deepness is getting worse, all of a sudden.
Yeah.
All these people who have no understanding of Terris culture are kind of adopting or...
and the Terris people are like, that's not what that means at all. You're all just being trendy, and
that's our stuff, right? That's our religion and our culture. And then adding insult to injury, now Alendi is being declared as the hero.
Well, I think it probably got more trendy with Alendi.
Yeah.
But
because I think popularizing the prophecies is what helped him cement his rule, as he because Alendi was also a conqueror, right? Like he
did conquer, yes.
Conquered. I think, any ruler who has some prophecies to back up their legitimacy is going to publicize that to make sure everyone knows.
It was super cool rereading the epigraphs prepping for this show, because as much as I like the way of the Stormlight epigraphs, the Mistborn epigraphs I have a very deep fondness for these ones, and just like reading Quan's writing about Alendi, because in book 1 we didn't even know his name.
Yeah.
Alendi. It's just so cool. Just where Alendi convinced everyone else that he was Hero of Ages once Quan said, oh yeah, this is the Hero of Ages. Alendi kind of took that and ran with it and convinced kings and stuff.
Yeah.
Reading this epigraphs, I kind of wonder how much of his anger at Klenium was also kind of anger at the leaders of the Terris people as well.
Yeah.
Because I definitely get the impression the Terris kind of had this stereotype around them of being these peaceful philosophers, holy men, and there's this whole generation of Terris who are just kind of working the fields and who are facing these stereotypes, and they kind of are no, we want to prove ourselves. We don't want to fit these stereotypes that the leaders kind of are.
And I agree. Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because he wishes if him and his friends were in charge, they would likely want to assert Terris dominance, and so I can definitely see that anger being directed at his own people as well. And I mean, ultimately, he subjugated them all, right? So,
well, that's just Grace. That's super interesting. Hearing that he was probably pissed off at the Terris elders because he made his friends into Kandra. He made the other guys into Mistwraiths. like when you think about it, it's like, wow, he was really petty there.
And so that's the other thing, like, because like when we see the first generation in Well of Ascent or Hero of Ages, they're like, oh, these old wise former Feruchemists, but it's like, oh, they're that now, but they were like young punk zealots like Roshar, right? They weren't Terris leaders; they were packmen.
Yeah, so they were his friends.
They weren't like it's not like the Synod of the day or the leader of the world.
I don't think
bringers, world bringers in Mistborn, world singers
and
world bringers. Okay, like those people were just turned into Mistwraiths. So.
Well, yeah, because the Terris elders, they except for Quan, they all supported Alendi. So yeah, he couldn't do that.
No,
like that would have directly screwed with everything that Roshar tried to do. So
one more thing I'll say is with these epigraphs, it's interesting seeing the Lord Ruler as such an emotionally driven person.
Yes.
Like so driven by hatred because he comes across as so cold and controlled. When we see him in person,
he's apathetic.
He's apathetic. Yeah. So you kind of wonder, okay, is that passion and that hatred or anger, that drive still existing underneath, and he's just learned to control it because he's been alive for 1,000 years, or does he just not care about anything because he has so much, 1,000 years of perspective, so nothing seems like a big deal anymore because in 100 years everything will be different, but he'll still be the same. So
I mean, when you can survive being nearly beheaded and you can just what could possibly hurt you? Like, whatever. That noble houses will fall. It'll be fine.
Although his last moments, while he was pretty apathetic through that whole fight with Vin, in his last moments, like there is kind of that sense of like when he says, you don't know what I do for the world.
Yep.
Like a sense that he's getting the short end of the stick, and that there is some that's at least the main moment for me where I kind of saw some fire from the Lord Ruler.
Because before he's like, whatever, Steel Ministry, politicking, whatever, don't care, doesn't really matter.
And also interesting that this describes him as violent, because when you see that the Lord Ruler has created a violent society, and even how he handled Kelsier, like it was very nonchalant, but it was also pretty, like he blew up one side of his face with a slap, so
it was trivial to do. So that's a very interesting point with Roshar being so passion guys, passion. Okay.
Roshar is odium.
Yep, that's right. He was Race all along. Race time traveled back. No. But you're gonna see those things throughout the Cosmere, obviously. But he was an awful person at the beginning. And as we'll see, he grew to be better, but early Final Empire, I imagine he made tons of mistakes and it sucked. And he had no idea how to rule. He wouldn't even have advisors, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting because you can kind of perceive him as a little abrasive, I think, just with his hostility. But then Alendi also calls him charismatic, so I'm sure he was like a very divisive figure, like I'm sure the people who liked him, he could be very inspiring when he wanted to be.
That's true.
But then, obviously, he was probably controversial.
Yeah. So, you guys know the story. Roshar murdered Alendi before he got to the Well of Ascension. And then Roshar is just like, you know what? I'm going to stop the deepness myself. What's up? I'm going to take this power. I got this under control. You're not going to release the power. I'm going to take it for myself. Which was good in some ways, but So we got to talk about the Ascension, right? Before we get too much into the final empire, because in prepping this, I was like listing all the things the Lord Ruler did in very rapid succession. Holy crap, he did a lot in the Ascension. So, thing number 1, deepness is the mists. Which, by the way, the mists being the deepness, when you reread Alendi's book, it's like, wow, they were really frightened of the deepness, but I guess, the mists were killing people, so that's fine. But
yeah.
But he moves Scadrial closer to the sun to burn away the mists. Mm-hmm. It's like, great work. But then was crappy at it. And so then he made the ash mounts to cool the planet down. And then changed the plants to survive ash and microbes to break down the ash, and then changed people so that they could inhale it without coughing and like dying.
Not get the black lung.
Yes.
Yeah. This is interesting for many reasons, but this is because he was holding preservation's power, right? And so instead of fixing his original problem, he just like kept fixing smaller things and like changed less and less and made more minute changes.
Yeah. Because the more he used the power, the less he wanted to change things. I think is the...
Yeah. Then, not only did he change people to survive the ash, he actually changed a lot of humans. Non-consensually, by the way. He just used the power of the Well of Ascension to just literally change what people look like. Because in the Ascension, he made the Ska and the nobility. Which was a real thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He made Ska into shorter, hardier, and more fertile people. And made nobles taller, more intelligent, and stronger, but less fertile.
Yeah.
Now, this, like, blows my mind, because we know that after the Ascension, he gave beads of Lerasium to foreign kings who were not directly under his control to bribe them to his side. So I guess he just, like, planned that, like, okay, these groups, these are people I'm gonna bribe. These other guys that I don't like, they're all Ska. They're not gonna be nobles, because the nobles, they're gonna be the good ones, and I'm gonna bribe them and make them into my own. That's kind of crazy that he would have the foresight to do it well, or maybe if there were any groups of nobles that he screwed up with, he just murdered them.
Yeah, like he might have, used existing class structures. Like if you're a peasant in whatever kingdom you're in, you become a Ska. If you're a noble and already have power, like I definitely don't think he would have made like a low class person into a noble genetically. Because what would be the use, right? Because they'd just be, because people don't know the social cues yet that, oh, these taller people are the ones we should be following, right? That he had to train them in that. So like I think he would have been like, oh, I want to take advantage of existing power structures. But he might have turned some nobles into Ska though, because if he knew, or like,
well, like,
if there was like rival kings or something, maybe he said, oh, I'll turn this one into a Ska and then help the remaining one like murder or take over the other.
So there's actually a word of Brandon on this by Sherlock E.B. that says, why did Roshar feel the need to create Ska and nobility? Why not alter all humanity to be nobles if you have the power? And Brandon just says, Roshar, particularly back then, was a petty man. This caused him to do many things that, strictly speaking, were not best for his empire. Which is hilarious. And it's like, oh, wow, what a dick. But that almost makes me feel like he did the thing that, like, people would do if I had divine power, I'm gonna screw over all the people who screwed me over. I'm gonna make those guys Ska. Because screw those guys, and I'm gonna make people who I don't hate as much, they'll be nobles. I'll make them better.
I can definitely imagine Roshar looking at like all of Kalenium and just being like, you thought you were better than me? I'll just like meddle with your genetics and now you're Ska. Like, look at you now.
However, so
Yeah.
I was thinking that too, but he was also needing to masquerade as Alendi, right? Like
Yeah.
and so on one hand, you want, like, Alendi was from Klenium, but Alendi also had humble beginnings. So, like, a lot of the nobility in Klenium might not, like, they might know, some of them might know him personally now, and so those might be people Rashek would want to target to remove because they could blow his cover.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
there's also, like, people there who maybe don't know Alendi personally and only know him by reputation.
We actually have a word of Brandon that said that the Lord Ruler did actively impersonate someone he was not, which was obviously Alendi. It's like, oh yeah, I'm totally the Hero of Ages, guys. Don't worry. I look different now because I ascended. And
so we probably did pick out people who didn't know Alendi as well, or even seen him personally before, to be like, those ones I can like fool best, and they'll be
That's
my
true.
followers closest.
Right.
Yeah. Also thinking about making all these decisions in the, like, minute or however long he held, like, the power for, right? So he's like, okay, these people are going to be Scott. These people are going to be nobles. Yeah, and I know, like, the power expands your mind, right? Almost beyond time, and, like, well, and I'm assuming it's like an effect similar to Adium, you know, how you're able to think so much quicker, but, like,
it gives you
on
the
a
capacity.
way bigger scale. So yeah, but just all the things he was doing is really crazy.
We'll continue to talk about that because that is crazy. Yeah. In addition, he had, in case his human modifications completely failed, he had 2 contingencies. The first was the Kandra. And so he spoke to his friends during his ascension and gave them a choice to turn directly into Kandra. So he made them into Kandra. Then all the other fair chemists and those world bringers, I guess, he made into Miswraiths. And the Miswraiths bred true, and, you know, you spike them to become Kandra. Which is interesting for a lot of magical reasons, but all of Alendi's advisors, I guess, if there were Terris world bringers advising him, well, they're all gone. Because they're Miswraith monsters. That must have been a really fun evening. Whatever camp they're in. That would be not a good day. Very bad day.
Well, and, like, if the Terris culture was at all similar to what we see in the Final Empire, like, if it had similar elements of, like, travel and retaining knowledge and storytelling, like, there was probably Feruchemists in, like, foreign courts, you know?
Oh, sure.
Sharing stuff. So, you know, you can imagine you're at this thing, or you're having a conversation with a world bringer, and then they just melt in front of you. Like, meanwhile, you're either getting shorter or taller.
Oh, and also the sun is red, and
the sun is red, like, just like
terrible.
Yeah.
I wonder if people were like, "Wow, those fair chemists got completely wrecked at that time if they're melting in there, in front of your eyes." But I guess you wouldn't. That probably wouldn't be the most memorable thing that happens on that day. All things considered, it's like, wow, I don't even know. So much going on. But, like, that shows, in that moment, he didn't want Feruchemy to, like, mix, because he wanted Feruchemy out of the population, because he understood the metallic arts, and he understood Lerasium and stuff. So he tried to remove the Feruchemists right then.
And his choice of Allomancy being the public magic, as opposed to Feruchemy being the magic that he allowed to be public, and Allomancy being the one he kept just for himself, is also really interesting.
Yeah, because
like,
he could have had his packmen just be rulers.
Yeah. And, you know, and Feruchemy would have, you know, spread among the upper class, and the only way, like, we know there was some allomancy out there, but it wasn't well known or well.
It was only granted by the Mists.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it was. Yeah.
Wasn't Alendi a seeker?
He was.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So maybe the Lord Ruler felt he could track Furukami better, and he was worried like this random element of allomancy might. But like, to me, yeah, I think he just saw the better potential of allomancy. And also with Adium, he had a way to control Mistborn, right?
Oh yeah, jeez.
Well, I do have a vague memory, and I don't know if this is an actual WoB or not, but of reading somewhere someone basically saying that, or if it was a WoB random saying that by the nature of Feruchemy, like Rashek knew that it would be easier to control allomancy or something, because Feruchemy you have like the kind of memory aspect to
that's
it.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
And I think that was an annotation.
Fearing copper mines. Yeah, I think it was an annotation too. Because copper mines, totally. Like, if he wants to recreate history and shape it to his narrative, a copper mine is the most threatening thing. Because the keeper can. And also, like, he had just discovered that Ruin was manipulating the copper mines too. So I wonder if part of that was also taking away a tool.
That's true.
Of
That's
Ruin.
A really good point, actually.
Because the whole reason Alendi got in the place he was is because of the reliance on copper mines.
Mm-hmm.
That's all true. But I think the main reason is just that.
Yeah.
Allomancy is, hey, look, guys, I have this awesome power. You should definitely follow me. I mean, I'll kill you if you don't, but, like, it'll be just a lot easier if you take these awesome magical powers.
Yeah.
And if I'm a foreign king, all right, you're gonna kill me if I don't, like, okay, yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm in.
And then that's a good point. He was the only source of allomancy, whereas if he had chosen Feruchemy, there would have been Feruchemists who disagreed with him.
He got to choose the allomancers and choose their
he
kings.
got to choose the allomancer. Yeah. So.
And before this, I always thought of Rashek's decisions at the Well of Ascension as a very, like, logical choice to try and, like, save humanity. And I think there was a part of that.
Yeah.
But going through it again now, I definitely see more of the pettiness and the spite that was, like, underlying everything he did.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely, it's very petty. But the other thing with the Kandra, it just blows my mind that he did so much. The other thing with the Kandra is that he made them into this weird form in case, like, he did destroy the world. Then, like, well, at least there's some life left.
That'll survive. Like, the sentient cockroaches who can survive any... any calamity.
Also, though, there was Contingency Plan 2, which we actually have no idea how that actually worked. But he set an entire other group of people on the South Pole. How did they survive in the ash without his genetic modifications? Who the crap knows? But he plopped them there and maybe did different modifications? I don't know.
I think also he, like, we know so little about the South Pole, right? Like, it might have also been they had other means of surviving the sun, because the ash mounts, like, he might not have put ash mounts on that side of the planet. And of course, like, events like this affect, like, the whole planet. Like, if a bunch of volcanoes the size of the ash mounts erupted on Earth, it would affect the whole planet, right?
Absolutely.
But maybe that side of the planet does have less ash, and the compensation is more that they have a different way of surviving the closeness of the sun.
Yeah. So we should probably do an episode on the Southern Scadrians at some point, because there's so much there. But two contingency groups, in case he accidentally murdered everyone. So that's nice.
He flattened the area where the Well of Ascension was and, like, put decoy mountains far away so people wouldn't actually know where it was.
Yeah, he totally reshaped the world. He moved the magnetic North Pole to be where the Well of Ascension was.
No, the Well of Ascension was already the magnetic North Pole, I thought. Didn't he just move that then put the like...
Well, he decoupled the tilt from the from the magnetic north was not the same as the true north, right?
True north, yeah. But the well was always the magnetic pole, I think.
Yeah.
And he moved that, yeah.
I think he also did stuff with the pits of Hathsin to, like, make that into a thing.
I think no preservation hid Ruin's body. So I think the pits... Although the Lord Ruler might have modified them.
Yeah, maybe he did modify them. I'm kind of forgetting.
Because did the Black Lake become the pits?
That's... having looked at the Ruins Perpendicularity Coppermind article recently, it is unclear because there are some words of Brandon where Brandon's like, oh yeah, you know, below the pits, that's where the Ruins Perpendicularity is. And it has to be, right?
Yeah.
Because that's where the interplanetary trade goes through, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like he moved some of that stuff.
Yeah. Well, although, like, the way he moved it, like if Luthadel is where the well was close to the Black Lake, and Luthadel is close to the pits. So, like, and like the pits are a little bit like south of Luthadel, and the lake was south of the well.
I thought it was north, but whatever.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, what?
Anyway, Final Empire geography class. Do you remember?
101. Yeah.
Do you remember that the capital of the Western Dominance is Tremberdare, not Fodrex City? It's true.
Yeah.
No, but you're right. Also, the Lord Ruler understood all the metallic arts, understood compounding, understood hemalurgy. He understood 3 constructs, and knew how to make Inquisitors and Koloss. Also, but with flattening the land, it's actually super interesting if you compare the Final Empire map with the new map, because he flattened Luthadel, or what became Luthadel, right?
Yeah.
But, like, kind of reshaped the continent, because the same coastline that's on the Final Empire map is actually on the New World map.
In the Elendil era map.
But, like, man, if you were, like, far away in what would become the Burnlands, you're just screwed. You're just completely screwed. Like, would these people even have places to live there? Like, he's reshaping the continent and everything, and killing tons of biodiversity and stuff with, like, no flowers and changing all the plants. So, like, maybe your palace, if you were enemy king, is just, like, in a totally different spot, and you have no idea where anything is anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure some things were the same, but, oh man, not a good day for most people.
No.
We don't know how much of the world was inhabited before Roshar changed
That's
everything.
really true.
Because people would have been evacuating towards the well as well, because that's the last, like, the deepness, right, starts on the reaches, and then, like, the area around the well is the last place that the deepness comes to.
Is that true?
Well, that's how it worked when it was coming back, and I think
right, and it was centering around Luthadel,
around Luthadel, right. And I think Alendi also mentions when they get to Terris, the deepness is fainter there as well, I think. I found it. I found it.
You did?
We are close now. It's chapter 33 of Final Empire. We are close now. Oddly, this high in the mountains, we seem to finally be free from the oppressive touch of the deepness. It has been quite a while since I knew what that was like.
Very interesting.
Yeah, and that could be an altitude thing, potentially, but I think given what we've seen with how the mist, like Luthadel was the last to be swallowed,
right,
that the well is the kind of, like, they start outward and come in towards the well, and so a lot of the world's population around the time of the Ascension might have been migrating towards the well as the lands further out became uninhabitable already.
Right, because all the crops would die. Yeah, that
Yeah.
seems very likely. And would give people reason to center. No, this is the main city. Yo, what's up? Like, you're already here.
It also makes me wonder, in the time of the books, how long was the deepness strengthening before they realized it? Because all the characters are in the middle of the empire, right? So for how many years, on the edges or outside of the empire already, was the deepness starting to strengthen and come more in the day? And it just took them a while to notice.
Yeah, because Alendi was hero for Quan mentions a decade of war.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting. But
yeah.
So yeah, the timeline is a little interesting there. Blame it on maybe Ruin did it differently at this time, and after the Lord Ruler died, Ruin's strengthening the mists more after that and supercharging it then, whereas he was a little more careful to cultivate Alendi, the right person. I should not question your memory of Mistborn Era 1, Matt. I know this.
Oh, but I'm wrong sometimes, and when I am, I'm I forget what it was the other time, but there was this thing I was sure was a real thing, and it wasn't. So
well, that happens to the best of us, but 9 times out of 10, you should bet on Matt's vague recollections of Era 1 to be spot on.
Just reaching into my copper mines, and there's thing, kind of, sort of.
Yeah, seriously.
Interestingly enough, that's also the same epigraph that mentions the Black Lake.
Yeah. Which is the perpendicularity, and the Mist Spirit stabs Fennec to not go in there.
We had a lot of TWG threads about this epigraph back in the day.
And I was just I totally just thought the Black Lake was not important the whole time. I remember that. So that's nothing. It doesn't matter. So that's the Ascension. So now we have the next 1,024 years of the Lord Ruler's life. So going great. But fortunately, we don't really know a lot of what he did post-Ascension other than bribe rulers, create his empire, conquered a lot of people. Tons of people.
Yeah.
Apparently all 14 lands, I guess. Who the hell knows?
It did some genocides.
I would say so.
Wiped some people out.
Presumably he started people opposing him he made a lot of people into Kolos, and then he had Kolos armies and stuff.
Yeah, Kolos. And he also started his church too. Set up the whole steel ministry. Maybe not in its form it is as we know it, but he got that going, and it eventually evolved into what we see in the books. So
his church, for what it was, at least.
Yeah.
And people held out, but he conquered them, and he didn't finish conquering until the 3rd century, right?
Yeah, well, there's the one people that Zed mentions were wiped out.
It's 3rd century.
Yeah, or who lasted longer than anyone.
The Jaw. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Aha! Jawism. Yeah.
So whenever they petered out, which is a couple centuries in, the Lord Ruler was still quashing, and then he's continued to deal with rebellions and stuff since then.
Yeah. Now, so there's so much to talk about the first 5 to 6 centuries of the Lord Ruler's rule, right?
Oh, Eric, you got that backwards, actually.
Oh, really?
The Jaw were the first to be killed off because they were so outspoken about their devotion that they were easy to hunt down.
Oh, okay. All right.
They didn't last long past the Ascension.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, there's another religious group though that did last longer.
I have 3 centuries. 3rd century.
That sounds about right. I'm sure someone in the comments will have the exact number, though. So if you have that, you can feel free to tell us.
Well, it's just when we're like, yes, we'll do a good Lord Ruler podcast. It's like, what do you research? You have to God, we're probably forgetting some things here, but our vague recollections probably right. Presumably survived beheadings and numerous rebellions.
Although either I think in an annotation or a wob, Brandon has said that some of the Lord Rulers coming back from death stories were exaggerated. And so like there's that list of like crazy things that he survived, and it's a combination of truth and embellishment. And obviously with Miles, we saw what was possible with compounding goal. So we know a lot of that probably could have really happened.
Seriously,
like he probably wasn't burnt away to a skeleton though and then healed. Like he probably didn't heal himself from being a skeleton, because that's one of the, I think, myths of the Lord Ruler is that they burned him till he was just bones and then he regenerated, which is like the visual of that is so crazy. It's a chapter 15. I found it. Kelsier says, I searched for 2 years to find a way to kill him. Men have tried everything. He ignores normal wounds, and decapitation only annoys him. A group of soldiers burned down his inn during one of the early wars. The Lord Ruler walked out as barely more than a skeleton and then healed in a matter of seconds. So he was probably like, if that really happened, he was probably really freaking burned, and like,
that's not that hard to exaggerate.
Yeah. Yeah, he probably wasn't just bones, because I assume.
When I'm looking at these, the part where the Lord Ruler killed Kelsier, it's interesting that the Lord Ruler's voice is accented.
Yeah, lightly accented.
Yep, because he's Terris.
And what's interesting though, when someone lives kind of in pseudo isolation, like the Lord Ruler does, like for example, in England, the royal family has actually a distinct accent. That's like, so like, and part of that is because, you know, everyone around them is kind of talking a certain way, and they're, like there's some distinction there. I was reading somewhere. Our British fans can correct me if I'm
well, I mean, yeah, just think about like
wrong about
what
that.
was English 1,000 years ago.
Yeah,
like
but like there's some preservation
absolutely
there. It was an article, I think, about how the actors on The Crown prepared to
That's
play.
really interesting.
Yeah.
But
so
like, in particular, though language probably didn't change much in the Final Empire period, the Lord Ruler still is a relic from a very bygone age.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Because it's like he can talk the same way he did 1,000 years ago, right? So,
God, I just love the scene. Lord Ruler just kills Kelsier. Let the executions begin. Yeah, give me that. It's like we're continuing the executions. We're done here.
There's a lot of good art of that scene, and it's always like these really awkward images, actually, because the Lord Ruler's pierced through with 2 spears at that point, but just like keeps walking.
Yep.
And yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I find it very amusing that people burned down his inn. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
In the early days. But yeah, I would say Roshek's early rule, very different from Alendi's rule, where Alendi was persuasive, and Alendi conquered, but the Lord Ruler really conquered.
I'm kind of curious about his early rule. How much of the like class structure stuff was already in place? Because it's weird to me to imagine overnight him just going, all right, most of the population is just slaves now, and just like that it happening and people being like okay with it.
Yeah, no, totally. And the plantation system itself, we know didn't come in until later. But but we don't know. The Ska still could have been slaves before that,
Yeah.
and it was just less organized, right?
Mhm.
So like I'm assuming what the books refer to as the plantation system is the system where the Lord Ruler owns all the Ska and then leases them to the nobility, and then it's, set up where they're working on the plantations, and then the nobles manage that. They
Yeah.
might have had other models of slavery prior to that.
Yeah, but
Well, and also the fact that now you can't notice much of a physical difference between the nobles and the Ska, or enough that you can write it off as diet. Whereas we know originally there
the
was
balance
actual
was real.
differences.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I also kind of wonder how much, like, how the Lord Ruler doesn't want any Ska having allomancy. Was that as big a deal early in the Empire if we had like more interbreeding to the point that those, because if they had no interbreeding from day one and Ska, like half nobles were hunted down from day one, I don't think you would have had that extent of mingling to make them indistinguishable.
I
So
feel like that could have developed just later. I don't
yeah,
think the Lord Ruler foresaw that being an issue,
no,
but once he gave allomancy to, those
yeah,
other kings, right? Then he's like, "Oh, okay." Later, a few centuries later, once all of their children definitely become mistborn, right?
yeah,
That we're trying to enslave the Ska. Oh, this is not going to work out well if some people who I don't have my thumbs in very well, like these slaves, get these abilities. Oh, we need to no, you guys cannot interbreed ever.
yeah. And I think that's primarily because with the Terris, the interbreeding restrictions are to prevent allomancy from mingling with Furukami. For the Ska, really, it's more a practical thing where he just doesn't want the lower class to have the power to rebel.
Right.
So I can see that not being a concern initially, where he's like, oh, if the Ska get like one mistborn, we'll just recruit him and then he'll be a noble, right? Or we'll kill him.
Yeah.
Whereas, when allomancy becomes more diluted and there's more of them, but like less powerful ones, I can see him being like, okay, I don't want like a little group of like Ska soothers and rioters getting together and like stirring things
trouble.
up, or like I think I could see that becoming more important later on in his rule.
So do you think at first the Ska were just kind of like lower class, secondhand citizens, and then as time went on, like their rights were taken away more and more until the like slavery happened?
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
I would say that first century is so chaotic that maybe the Lord Ruler just didn't care if someone swore fealty to him. He's like, cool, great, don't care.
Yeah, and the other thing is he didn't rule the whole empire.
Yeah.
For a while.
Yeah.
So like what was going on in other kingdoms, who knows? Like they probably had a diverse set of class structures that were maybe slightly altered when the Lord Ruler changed all their genetics.
Probably, yeah.
Like it's kind of weird to think about that, how he was thinking ahead to a class system, some sort of class system where you had these two, you had the elites and then the working class to support the elites. But before that, he had to like get to a place where he could impose that system, and so they existed with these modifications for quite a while.
Well, I feel like it was less foresight and more pettiness that like I'm gonna screw the people I don't like over, and then other people I'll make I don't hate them, so I'll make them into nobles, right?
Yeah.
Like I feel like that was more what it was like, and then later he had the idea, oh, okay, let's fix this.
I think the one element for me, which I have trouble explaining except as foresight, is the balance. Because like that's like, you would think, oh, I want my friends to like have lots of kids because that'll make them happy. That he made the nobles less for that kind of supply and demand thinking, right? That there's always more Ska than nobles.
That's true.
So like that element of it to me was of kind of foresight. But I agree, like I'm gonna make you short and a peasant.
Well, and also
was
making the
probably
others
petty.
more intelligent and
More
actually
intelligent,
stronger.
yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
that's kind of actually insane.
Yeah. So,
Um,
um,
yeah, I don't know. So the plantation system, easy to forget. The plantation system only was around 200 years, which is crazy because we think like, oh yeah, that's how the final empire was. The Lord Ruler didn't make any changes. He made a lot of changes within his empire. And it has not been particularly great or stable.
Yeah. And like if you think of the first century or two as him like stabilizing or conquering for a century or so and then stabilizing for another century, that's 200 years in. If he tried a couple different systems, like 200 years each, and then if it's like, oh, at 200 years, if it's not working, maybe I should try something different.
Yeah. Because the Book of False Dawn was all like, yeah, one would think now with the single immortal governor, society would finally have an opportunity to find stability and enlightenment. It is the remarkable lack of either attribute in the final empire that is the Lord Ruler's most grievous oversight. So
and it's important, I think, to know too, Rayshek as a character, like he's not someone who grew up as like a prince who's like familiar with governorship. He's obviously someone who had a lot of time to learn. But
yeah, absolutely.
That doesn't mean that it came naturally to him. And one of the reasons why he hated Clenium too was that, or the Terracers, was the lack of sophistication and that sort of thing that the Terris culture had. And so
but then he made his empire into Clenium basically with the keep architecture and stuff.
Yeah, but he might not have like fully understood all those systems, right? So he was trying to like mimic or emulate something he maybe didn't fully understand at the beginning.
I actually totally forgot a thing that he did at the Well of Ascension that's actually really important.
Yes.
The Lord Ruler did not eat a bead of Lerasium.
Yeah.
Oh.
He actually remade himself into an Allomancer with the power of the well.
Oh.
And so he's actually more powerful than like Elend or another Lerasium Mistborn would be, like from the beginning. Like he...
Thanks, Sazed, for that confusion in there. But certainly the other Lerasium Mistborns were very much more powerful. But
but the Lord Ruler was like a step.
Yeah. We'll probably talk about that in a more power-y centric thing.
In a mechanic,
I wanted to just mention that because we didn't mention that earlier. So Matt, here's one thing that most listeners might not know about the Final Empire. And it was a thing that you asked Brandon once. You asked about a factoid about the Lord Ruler and the Final Empire.
Yeah. So I asked, this was at the Alloy of Law release party, and I asked tell us something about the Lord Ruler that we don't already know, which is a type of question I think he's since banned.
You can't ask questions like this.
Things.
Well, this is better than like, tell me something about the Cosmere we don't know. Like, at least it was more specific. But don't ask questions like these anymore.
And, I'm interested in character too, and I know he gets a lot of like mechanics and world building questions. So I was kind of like, oh, give me a character factoid. Also, the Lord Ruler's plot was more or less done at the time, or perceived to be done at the time. So I think he maybe felt a little safer giving some backlore. But what he said was the Lord Ruler once tried to end the Final Empire, which is really interesting. So that, presumably before the Plantation System, because it seems like that was him saying, oh no, I'm going to take complete control. But, in that time period before that, he had lots of time to think, oh, maybe I'll do something different. And we haven't managed to find out anything really about his motivations more. Like, I think I've seen a couple different questions trying to build on that, and he hasn't given out much more information.
We do know, I actually asked if the Lord Ruler's children were involved in the plot for him to give up the Final Empire, and they were. We're going to talk about that
Yeah.
But I like to imagine that maybe the first few centuries, he's trying to have like absolute control. This book on where we hear about the plantation structure said that the Lord Ruler found the plantation structure troubling because of the freedom it allows the aristocracy. So I feel like maybe in the beginning he like tried to have really tight control over stuff.
Yeah.
And that just didn't work because people just were like, no, we're not going to do that. And that caused a lot of strife, maybe.
And because really, like, if you look at the lives of the nobles, they really live like, especially the great houses, really live like kings, you know? Like, they have freedom for the most part to do whatever they want, as long as, you know, they're paying some taxes here and there and staying in the Lord Ruler's favor. Like, it's very similar to, you know, free lords or free kings and just paying fealty to the church. You kind of think about, you know, that period in Europe when the Catholic Church was very powerful, and you know, they were still king of their country, but they had to be on the good side of the Pope because the Pope had a lot of power then.
Yeah.
But like, I imagine the Lord Ruler's apathy could very easily have come from, well, I tried to squeeze them very hard and be a hands-on ruler, and that did not work out so great. So maybe let's maybe that led to him wanting to give up the final empire. I'm like, man, I suck. This is crap. This is the worst. I don't know. I like to imagine that the time he tried to give up the final empire was like midway through, maybe.
That would make sense.
Because we gotta talk about the whole thing that, so whenever that happened, he had children, which is insane.
And who have since been confirmed to just have interbred into the population.
Yeah.
They weren't like all killed off or like moved to another part of the planet, or world hopped to another world so they didn't threaten him. They just, you know, had
They're
kids, lived lives. Yeah.
People who, you know,
which I know bothers you, Eric, to no end.
It does. Even at the Well of Ascension, Roshek's like, fair chemi and allomancy mixing. That is no good. I am going to change all my friends into blobs. Okay? And all of the Terris elders, they'll also be blobs. All the fair chemists that are living, they're blobs. But, you know, I'm not gonna murder the people I impregnate in my 1,000 year of rule. God, so stupid, Roshek. You're an idiot.
Do we have confirmation though that like he didn't suppress his powers or something?
No, I asked him. That was one of the things that I asked him. Like, did he suppress that? And Brandon just said no. I know, right? Like, the answer to that was no. Gah. Maybe we should talk about the subjugation of Terrace, right? Because that's kind of connected with this.
Especially since he made the Terris people into everything he hated about the Terris people, right? Like, he emphasized the docility and the servitude and when he originally wanted the Terris people to be dominant, he made them the opposite of dominant. So I think that's one of the the Lord Ruler is such a fascinating character on so many levels, but I think his relationship to his people is one of the most interesting. And Grace, I think that insightful comment you made earlier about him actually having some self-hatred for his culture is probably borne out in how he treated the Terris people.
Yeah,
definitely.
And we have a Hero of Ages epigraph where Sazed thinks that, Roshek, you know, destroyed the Terris religion because if he didn't, then someone else could maybe figure out the well and, you know, use it to defeat Roshek. And so, like, there was a part of that he just kept those secrets to himself, which presumably would be very easy after you change all the world bringers into Mistwraiths. So, that's not an issue. You don't even need to murder that
except for the first generation. Lucky for the team.
We also forgot the whole thing where Roshek talks to Quan, and Quan refused, and then
and then he
Lord Ruler
leaves him alive. He doesn't immediately destroy him.
Yeah.
Like with the power of the well.
Right, he doesn't turn him into a mist wraith. He spares him.
Yeah, he leaves him alive and then hunts him down.
Later. Maybe because he thought he could persuade Quan later, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. And I think Quan, as the, the first prophet or great announcer or whatever, would have been a good ally to, like, confirm his legitimacy.
Yeah, but he was also considered treasonous by Lendi's coalition.
Yeah, and also, I don't know, Quan is also a very interesting character to me because he, like, and them as a family, like, he's the Lord Ruler's uncle. And he... Oh, so this is interesting. So Quan has a photographic memory, right? And that's why he's able to see the mistake in the copper mind.
Yep.
And there's points where they're talking about the Lord Ruler where they also say, oh, the Lord Ruler never forgets a face. He can see a face only once and he remembers it forever.
So that's...
And it could be a copper mind, him using his copper minds, but it could also be that he shares the genetic whatever that Quan had,
That is interesting. I know there's an annotation that says that, the legend of the Lord Ruler's fantastic memory does stem from his copper mines.
Yeah.
But they also say that one ability that is not explained by Ferakemi is the Lord Ruler's thing that he can just determine when people tell the truth or not. And Brandon says in an annotation that that's just because he's probably just super old and experienced, and so it would be unlikely for you to lie to someone.
Yeah. Well, I also think like if he's burning tin or like compounding tin, like you can see so many like minute things. Like you could potentially do the thing that Toph does on Avatar: The Last Airbender, where sense the heartbeat or the vibrations. Like
I guess it could be basically like a polygraph. That like measures heartbeat and a bunch of other things, I think, right?
So I think between that and just him knowing people so well from
experience,
like his BS meter would be pretty high, I think, because he can, like, he's seen it all, right? Like, if someone lies to you 100 different people lie to you 100 different times, you're gonna start catching on to the tells.
I'm sure he had a very steep learning curve that first century after the Ascension.
Which is also probably why it was so chaotic. In that early century, there were some kings who said, oh yeah, I'm on your side, pal, and then screwed him over. And then, he got messed up and had to go back and murder everyone.
Hopefully not the ones he made Mistborn. Because that's just a political struggle waiting to happen. Okay, I gave you one of these. Let's wait for your kids. Have some kids. You have Mistborn, and I'll control them. Then I'll murder you. Maybe. Terrible.
Or I'll spike you.
Well,
because Inquisitors can still have children, right? That was confirmed, wasn't it? Or was it not?
I don't know if that is confirmed.
Okay, never mind. Well, but anyway, you could spike someone as an Inquisitor and then actually control them with the spikes.
Yeah.
On the topic of Rashek eventually hunting down Quan.
Yeah.
I wonder if he almost came to blame Quan for what happened. Because Quan was the one who told him, Quan first put Alendi on the path as the hero, and then Quan also told Rashek, you need to kill Alendi. So I can almost imagine a scenario where Rashek doesn't really like taking blame for stuff. I can definitely imagine a scenario where he kind of convinces himself, these things are Quan's fault.
But see...
I don't know.
I feel like, as a person who can also be very petty, who would love to hold divine power some point, and do very poorly at it. Don't give me divine power. I can just imagine, I have all this power now. This is great. Why would he need to blame Quan for that? Now kind of sucks, but I'm the most powerful thing on this planet. Who's actually going to be able to stop me? No one. Right? What would he be blaming Quan for? Like, it's not like he's like, woe is me for this terrible fate. Maybe not until like he tried to give up the final empire, right? But he would need to establish it first.
Yeah, I mean, more just like a general, like, if he had any kind of dissonance of like, the world is not great. Like, sure, I'm powerful and wonderful and I can do no wrong, and so anything that's wrong with the world must be like Quan's fault for setting me on this path, kind of thing.
It's like, man, I miss flowers. It's Quan's fault and not my fault, that kind of thing. Okay, yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, that makes sense. We didn't actually talk about the Terris subjugation, actually. It's easy to get off track with 1,000 years of history that's kind of like the timeline's a little vague and stuff, you know? So we actually know from Yeoman that the Canton of Inquisition wasn't started until the 6th century, which is insane in and of itself, I find. But also that the breeding programs were suggested by the Canton of Inquisition, and the Lord Ruler begrudgingly agreed to it. But the Terris subjugation occurred much earlier.
And I wonder why he was against it, right? Was it still some loyalty to his people, you know, that he didn't want to take that last step and, you know, totally do that to them? Or, you know, I guess there might have been other reasons for his hesitance.
I feel like, okay, so 6th century breeding programs start. I feel like he has to have had his kids before then, right?
Yeah.
Before he was persuaded, we need to specifically get Feruchemy out of things and control this very specifically. Right?
Yeah. And also, like, I think his kids would be a bigger deal if they were more recent. Because, you know, Mistborn got weaker and weaker, right? So, although another thing on, sorry, this is a slight sidetrack, but another thing on the kids' point is we know from the Alloy of Law books that when you mix Feruchemy and Allomancy, they break down faster. And that's why,
that's why you get Fairings.
Yeah, that's why you get Fairings. So his kids, that might be another reason why his kids aren't as big a deal.
Yeah, but I feel, I guess I just always thought the breeding programs were like also to prevent compounders and anyone to challenge him.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
But like 6 centuries in, there's this whole other dimension to the Lord Ruler, and that Ruin is just like messing with him the entire time.
Yeah.
And probably Ruin very much focusing on him in particular, because why would Ruin need to manipulate anyone else? You got the Lord Ruler. It's easy peasy if you want to destroy some stuff.
Here's my theory.
Okay.
So the Lord Ruler had some kids.
Uh-huh.
And the Canton of Inquisition didn't know. And then the kids started like going out and getting married, and the Inquisitors realized, hey, wait a second, some Terris like interbreeded, and now there's Feruchemy in the population. So they took this to the Lord Ruler, and he was like, oh, Terris did that. Oh, totally. I see. We totally need to be doing something about that.
The kid is not my son. Plays in the background.
That's not my problem. I've never made a mistake. I have never been dumb. But it's time for a change. It's time for a change. Okay, fine. You know what? As long as Roshar knows that him having kids was dumb, then that's fine. I accept this completely. Because it is dumb, Roshar. You're an idiot sometimes. Yeah. Well, the Inquisitors didn't know about compounding, you know? Yeah. Maybe, well, I think we have a word of Brandon that maybe some figured it out, but like they were not specifically taught that.
And I think they're also like, because unless you start with a Mistborn, most Inquisitors, their powers are specifically chosen. So you could design them so they don't have the metals to line up to compound. Even if they have Feruchemy and Allomancy to compound, you need those compatible metals. So like Inquisitors, like, they're just choose your own adventure, so you can kind of
True. So that's all very true. I feel like if the Lord Ruler had kids, though, that they would be for certain full Mistborn, even with the Feruchemy, right?
Yeah.
Come on.
Unless his kids could only be like if they would either get, like, if you had 3 options, like, you'd get either a full Mistborn, a full Feruchemist, or a Twinborn. Like, maybe you can't produce a full-born. I think that's what they call the Lord
No,
Ruler.
that is not actually a canonical term.
Okay, so that's a fan term.
That was actually made from a fanfic, and people ran with it. That is not a real term.
Well, I like the term, but as long as we will say it's a fanon term, full-born.
just like shard intent, that was a term.
Yeah,
that is a fan-made term, not necessarily a Cosmere term. Except capital I intent. Yeah, that's a Cosmere term, of course.
Yeah, but anyway, maybe a person who's a full Feruchemist and a full Mistborn, maybe you can't inherit all 32 powers genetically.
That's possible, and maybe like Ruin just persuaded the Lord Ruler that like, oh yeah, no, that would be a big problem. So you need to like get that Feruchemy out of there, and maybe in practice you don't get those full Mistborn, full Feruchemist combos.
Yeah, or maybe it's rare. Like maybe it's only 10% of the time or something that you would get. Because even then, like if he had 8 kids, none of the, like if it's against the odds, he might not have.
That's true, but maybe he still.
I don't know. We don't know how many kids he had either.
No, we have no idea. But they did breed with they interspersed into the population this super ultra powerful allomancy.
Which again probably means it was earlier rather than later.
Absolutely.
Because when there was still really powerful noble allomancers. So you wouldn't notice, that person can control Kolos or whatever.
Yeah.
And again, like if he wasn't as worried about that at the beginning, some of his like actual kids might have been like generals and stuff under him, right? Like we don't know his relationship with his children.
Definitely.
Like present day Lord Ruler having kids, you kind of imagine him putting them in a back closet or completely ignoring them.
Or just like murdering a Ska woman.
Or killing them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or even if it was just in that like first 100 years, just like, oh hey, like marry like my daughter, marry this like kind of iffy king and get him on my side. Like
absolutely. That like political marriage. The Lord Ruler wanted stability. He was shaped by preservation's power, so I feel like he could definitely do things that in those first 100 years that in retrospect were really dumb, but he could have married someone.
And as alien as the Lord Ruler seems, before his death, when he's been around 1,000 years, like he is human, right? So, like there was a time in that first century when Rashek was 30 years old and 40 years old, right? And like I think that kind of detachment from his humanity or came as he lived so many lifespans, right? And that early day he had human wants and
I mean, he was charismatic and he saved the world as far as everyone knew. And handsome, like
he
had women throwing themselves at him.
Yeah, he was super arrogant. Like, he could probably have. He would probably have lots of women who would love to try and get on his good side, right?
Yeah.
If he was the most powerful being on the planet.
I'll say nothing about the fictional fanfic that one of my characters. Do you remember that, Eric?
What? No, I don't.
My character Felicity from Mistborn, RP, she has a Lord Ruler fanfic called The Lord Ruler and I.
That's right.
It's a bodice ripper.
That's right. I remember that now. That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I mean,
it's also true that here's another Lord Ruler factoid that you don't really think about, where Vin was worried that the Lord Ruler would come to a ball. Like, that's a thing that sometimes occurs. That the Lord Ruler is like, yeah, I'm here. What's up?
I think Elend at some point says, oh, he hasn't come to a ball in years or something like that. So, like, it happens. But, once, every 5 years or something, or every Because like really 5 years is so short a time for the Lord Ruler.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like he's like, oh yeah, I went to a ball just last week. What are you talking about? Oh no, that was 10 years ago, sir. Oh,
Yeah,
I guess I
right.
should go again.
Yeah, and I imagine that he just interacted with less and less people as time got on, right?
Yeah.
Did we ever finish the thought about the Terris? I don't know. We don't really know a lot. We don't really know how that subjugation started. Really.
Just that it was a gradual thing and not a thing that was from the beginning. And especially as we know it, it wasn't from the beginning of the breeding program.
It's interesting that Roshar felt that like the Clenny were oppressors, and then he's pretending to be Clenny, and then he realizes, no, we need to like stamp out this religion very specifically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I find that very ironic. I'm gonna pretend to be Clenny and then do that thing. I will specifically oppress. But maybe he rationalized it that, well, I gotta do these things to save the world, and if some people don't get to worship their religion, then whatever, they're at least not dead. So whatever.
And I do think he probably used that rationalization of, it's for the purpose of saving the world a lot more than it was warranted for all the atrocities he did.
For the better good.
For the greater good.
The phrase he used, for the greater good, yeah.
Oh, yeah? Does he specifically say that?
No, I don't. Not specifically. I'm just saying, like, that sentiment very much fits with the Lord Ruler's character.
He also got better as time went on, right? And he got more altruistic and less petty and terrible. He got less, he was more apathetic, but in some ways he did care because he was preparing for the end. He was preparing for Ruin to return. He did know that Ruin would try something with the well. He didn't quite see it as being a Scott rebellion, but he made the storage caches. He was hiding Ruin's body. He trained all of his obligators to never speak about the storage caches and what was in it, so that Ruin could not hear it. Like, he did a lot of foresight and presumably got better at planning as things went on.
Yeah.
A question I have about the Lord Ruler as well is how Cosmere aware he is.
So we have a word to Brandon about that.
Yeah.
He didn't get a chance to really extend, to like explore with the power, to see really far out, but he like knew that there were other things. Yeah. And he did know of the interplanetary trade through the pits.
Yeah. But obviously he probably couldn't go himself because he can't just like hop off the planet he's subjugating.
Yeah.
For, but it is interesting in Secret History when like he comes to the well and Kelsier sees him. He seems to really know what's going on, and he's not really bothered by being in Shadesmar. And he, like, because the Lord Ruler is so invested, he could have like just stuck around as a spirit for a long time, and he's just like, nope, perpendicularity, I'm out.
Yeah.
I've always kind of gotten the impression that the Lord Ruler knew, and he could have gotten more information if he wanted to. He just didn't really care about the stuff beyond his control.
Yeah.
And like what was going on in his empire.
Yeah. I feel like he very easily could have like hopped into the perpendicularity in the pits at some point. He's got 1,000 years. He's got a lot of time of being bored in his box, right?
Sorry, I'm just reading this part in Secret History now. Another interesting thing about him is his relationship to Laras, or to preservation.
What does he do?
Well, because we know, I think preservation, Laras talks about like watching the Lord Ruler or liking him or something like that. But then when he comes and Kelsier's there, Fuzz clears his throat and says, it is my duty to be with you as you transition. Don't be worried, or "Be silent," the Lord Ruler said. Like, he just like, here's like a shard. Like, I know like Laris had like degraded a lot by then, but like he's still a shard, right? And the Lord Ruler's just like, shut up. So
I mean, that's in character.
yeah, in character. And kind of is almost a similarity between that lack of reverence is and we know he was not reverent as a young person, is almost a similarity or parallel between him and Kelsier. Which is kind of interesting.
I wonder how religious he was as a youth.
Mm-hmm.
Because what that just occurred to me is that maybe he personally, like, though he was culturally Terris, maybe he didn't really care about the religion.
Yeah,
really, right?
I can definitely see that.
And so when he creates his church, he's like, well, I don't really care about devotion, right?
Yeah.
And that just comes from maybe a sense that he doesn't really care about actual belief because he doesn't believe himself. And once he ascends, then, well, he's probably not going to get that much more religious, right?
Yeah. If, as we were saying earlier, he kind of does resent the Terris leadership and they are all like religious holy men, I can definitely see him having kind of a more apathetic view towards it because of that. Like,
yeah. I mean, I'm sure he feels like the Terris prophecies are real because he does believe that he is the hero of ages.
Mm-hmm.
I am a hero. I know what that means. It's a hero who survives all the ages, and that's clearly me. But
yeah,
I just don't really feel like there would be a lot of actual belief.
Yeah. And another thing, I think how it's interesting how that informs creation of the Steel Ministry, Eric.
Yeah.
You know, how it's not a very religious organization. And I kind of wonder if to begin with, he was like, I don't care about religion. But a church obviously could have just sprung up around him. Like, he's a figure that inspires certain people to worship him, right? And so I kind of wonder if that just kind of happened organically. And then he said, hey, this is a thing I can use to like help maintain my power and help, you know, control people with this church. It could be like an organizational structure.
So yeah, Matt, the imperial religion was based on the mercantile system of the Halot, focused on weights measured in permissions, and he wanted quantifiable measures of devotion, not true faith. Doesn't care about true faith.
Yeah, it's an interestingly from someone who maybe doesn't have a lot of reverence or religion himself, but it's also kind of a very Terris way of thinking about things, because Feruchimus can quantify these otherwise unquantifiable attributes, right? When you're storing things, you're creating like a regular person. I don't think, oh, how much sight do I have, or how much health do I have, or how much of, you know, but Feruchimus is always thinking about levels and stores and fuel. So
yeah,
anyway,
yeah,
absolutely.
So, you know, when we were talking about Kelsier and the Lord Ruler earlier, I kind of got curious and looked back, and it's interesting to read these early descriptions of a young Rashek, because it almost seems like very similar to what we've seen of Kelsier as a very handsome and charismatic person, but with a lot of like anger and hatred and passion towards a group that he feels is like oppressive behind it.
Yeah, no, like there's a lot of parallels actually, if you think about it that way.
Kelsier would probably be a really bad emperor.
Yeah, well, Brandon has pretty much said, you know, that Kelsier would have been just as bad as the Lord Ruler. So yeah, because like really, like Kelsier wanted to inspire rebellion, and he resented his hatred of the nobility is like almost like if you inserted nobles for Clenny and Kelsier for Rashek, like that description you wouldn't blink an eye at. Like it.
And I had my group of friends.
And he has his group of friends. Yeah. Oh yeah. Like if the same thing had happened with Kelsier. Like if Kelsier hadn't died and he had made it and he had taken the power at the well, instead of Vin, like he would have used it and he would have like made the crew into the new nobles.
Yeah.
And like made them super awesome.
Punished the nobles.
Yeah.
And like
he would have turned the nobles into Ska, and he would have done really similar things.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
No wonder that people are like, oh, the sovereign, that's the Lord Ruler. No wonder.
Yeah.
You know, when you think about it, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's some relationships here, and they're probably the same person to a Northern Scadrial. They're just like, oh yeah, the Lord Ruler's bands. Yeah. Right. Yeah, we know all about that. Obviously. So it's not even like a theory. People in world were like, that other person. Yeah, that's the Lord Rulers. Yeah, makes sense.
I'm sure both of them would hate the comparison, though.
Absolutely. It's like, what? You're comparing me to this lousy Ska? And Kelsier would strenuously disagree. So we kind of talked about his death. We talked about how he gained like more foresight and did become a better ruler. I think there's just one more character thing that we don't really know about, and it's, why is Luthadel called Lutha? Or is called Luthadel? Because I think there's a common idea that he named it after someone. Maybe named Lutha.
And I think part of that discussion started coming out after Alloy of Law came out, and we saw Elendel.
Yes.
Yes,
absolutely.
You know, and certain naming patterns, you know, that it either ends in L or Del. We're not really sure.
Yeah.
Like it could be Luthad or Lutha.
Sure.
But that idea has kind of started coming around.
Maybe the Lord Ruler's wife? Maybe.
Or lover.
I always thought that one seemed likely. I just, as a young and impulsive person that Roshar was, I can see that. It's like, I'll name a city after you. I feel very deeply for you. And for all we know, he actually did, you know? That's possible.
Yeah, it could also be, you know, one of his parents or like
one of his kids.
A respected family member, one of his kids. Yeah. But obviously someone who the Lord Ruler felt was important enough to memorialize.
And Brandon Raffos this, by the way.
Raffos it,
for some reason.
And it's interesting because we also don't know when Luthadel was named, right? Because at the beginning, right after the Ascension, there was no city there.
No.
Because he just flattened the mountains and it was a flat plain, right? So, you know, and then he spent some time conquering, and then, you know, cities grow over time. Like, I'm sure the Lord Ruler, like the old wall he probably built, and, you know, when he started setting up his capital city, but we don't even know if it was named then, right? It might have been.
No.
Presumably he immediately went to defend it and like fortify it because or like build a palace or something because that's where he put the well, right?
Yeah. And he wants to keep that secure. Yeah.
But
like Credit Shaw wasn't built overnight though.
Oh no.
So he had some like interim.
That said, that would be hilarious if we eventually learned. Oh yeah, he built Credit Shaw at the Ascension. Just like, boom, what's up? This is my palace.
I guess maybe he could have, hey? And there were also a lot of theories back in the day about Credit Shaw and whether, like, the spikes, it was meant to be, like, something more than just a palace.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but that would be a funny question to ask.
No, I don't think so now, but I just remember before Hero of Ages came out, there was...
Oh, yes, if the spikes had a purpose.
Yeah.
So someone go ask if Credit Shaw was created at the Ascension, but I feel like the answer is definitely no.
Yeah.
But, like, there was probably some crappy fort or something around it.
Yeah. And then... although the well, it was less important to secure it then because the well was empty, right? Like he obviously knew he wanted that location secure, but I don't think anyone could have done much with the well at that point because it was just
it was used
like
up.
they couldn't have destroyed it. I'm assuming no like mortal could destroy the well, and he knew he could like just come back and kill everyone. Like that's what like the Lord Ruler, like there's a lot of, you talk about who's the most powerful or invested individual in the Cosmere, and like I think like the God King, for example, in Warbreaker is likely more invested than the Lord Ruler. But the Lord Ruler, I think, is just from a straight offense, like killing standpoint. I think the Lord Ruler is one of the most deadly figures in the Cosmere.
Absolutely.
It's kind of tough to think of someone who could, like, the Orders of the Night Radiant, like
well, you'd need a Radiant, but yeah, he is very powerful. Like no one on Scadrial could possibly fight him.
And not to get into like the mechanics of his powers, but just like he can think super fast by compounding zinc. He can move super quickly, like Adium. He's got, and then all the offensive power of Allomancy.
He has
can,
Adium.
Fly and jump. Done. Yeah. He's got super strength and durability. He can the healing, which rivals how a Radiant can heal. If not is the same. And so
I feel like the main issue with Roshar is it's very similar to how an Oathbringer, they're just like, Shardbearers can't hold ground. You can be as powerful as you want and kill as many people as you want. To control a city, you can't do that yourself. And I think that's exactly the same with the Lord Ruler, right?
Absolutely. Although I do think he could hold ground more than a Shardbearer.
Well, yeah, but even
so, no. Eventually, he needs support, and that's why the church is important, right? Like he knows the Empire could burn around me, and I would survive and forge it anew. But that's like an inconvenience for him. Yeah, it's a lot of work. So
I mean, to some extent, Roshar could just pull like a reverse Nurgle and like soothe the army to like not want to fight.
I mean, that's absolutely. Like his power is ridiculous.
Like, can you imagine being like an army and then feeling that wash of dread spread over you as this like Mistborn Feruchemist just like crashes into you, army of Kolos who he's controlling at his back, like because that's the other thing is even though like he doesn't even necessarily need the loyalty of humanity because he can just control Kolos. Like it's which he can't use to govern though. That's the key. The Kolos only work for conquering. So he still needs
really good way to level a city.
Really
good. Very, very, very good.
Yeah.
It's always fun reading book 1 and being like, the Kolos. Oh, we don't want the Lord Ruler to bring his Kolos armies. That would be very bad. And then you see, oh yeah, no, it's very bad. Yeah, it's very bad. But presumably the Kolos were like also very controlled because the Lord Ruler can just order them to do whatever he wants, and if he needs to more directly control them.
I mean, back when he first started, he could just get one of his super powerful Allomancer minions to
do it too. Yeah.
Well, we should talk about that in a Powers podcast because how that controlling of the Kolos worked because it is very interesting. Well, I didn't get to complain enough about the kids as I would like. But you guys know me. I feel strongly about this. But any other like character-y thoughts on the Lord Ruler?
Just that I find classical Scadrial, like Elendi, Quan, and story in general super interesting. I think part of that is because like I don't think Brandon will ever write that story
Yeah.
because it's a very cliche story aside from the ending.
Yeah.
But and part of it is the mystique, how he's written it. I think he's written it to be curious and interesting, but it's such a, like, the characters, and like, even though we just get these glimpses of them, they have so much depth, I think, and it's
Just what was the
and there's
politics like of Elendil
yeah
conquering? How'd that all work?
yeah well, and even like the and like Quan, isn't like, he's a very cagey, eccentric individual, like not someone who would be welcome or normally seen in the halls of power, right? So like, it's got that typical narrative of the unlikely
It would be a very cliched
individuals.
story, but like,
Oh yeah,
because we know the answer, it's a very cool story. It's like, wow, that'd be awesome.
Rashik is a very interesting character.
I know.
And
I love him.
I think thinking about early Rashik is just very interesting, and trying to imagine what he was like back then.
Absolutely.
And now that we made the connection about Kelsier, I do think it's interesting to imagine like Kelsier's personality in that position.
Yeah. Not great.
On that, sorry, one more like small sidebar. What do you guys think of the Lord Ruler's motivations or his decision to not kill Mare and to like hold her back and then send her back to the pits with Kelsier? Because that really messed with Kelsier's head, right? Because that's why he thought Mare was a traitor. No, like what the Lord Ruler was thinking when how he released Mare later, and part of it might have just been because he had to wait for her tin run out for her to go to the pits. But I kind of wonder how intentional that was to mess with Kelsier and kind of break the trust between them and make Kelsier wonder, did he, because like he could have just killed, well, he could have just killed them both, but instead he wanted to punish them further, so he sent them to the pits. But then there's also the step of sending Kelsier to the pits, then Mare, and then sending her a while later, right? So I kind of wonder if he wasn't trying to play on.
I think that's possible. One thing that just stuck out in my mind as you were saying this is that I'm just imagining Ruin whisper into the Lord Ruler's mind that he should kill them. And then the Lord Ruler's like, no, I'm going to be merciful. I'm going to send them to the pits. Much better. Look how merciful I am. Screw you, Ruin.
Like, I almost thought of it as kind of the opposite of that. At that point, it was his apathy of, they're gonna die soon anyways. I've lived for 1,000 years. Their lives don't mean anything. Like, a few weeks at the pits versus killing them now make zero difference to me.
Also, completely possible.
Alternately, the Lord Ruler was like, oh, I'm just gonna kill these people. I don't care. And then Ruin, seeing the destructive potential in Kelsier, influenced the Lord Ruler to leave him alive.
Yeah, that's
because like Kelsier, like this situation forged Kelsier into the torch that burned the Empire down, right? Before that, he was a selfish thief just out to get rich.
Ruin is not sending the usually vague, oh yeah, you should just kill them all type thing, right? Like, the Ruin is very specifically focusing on Rashek, right? Like, all the time. Like, spending his energy doing that. That's what Ruin is doing. So, I can imagine that the Lord Ruler wouldn't expect, like, something to get him to spare Kelsier. Because that would be out of character for Ruin to do that. And so Rashek wouldn't be thinking about that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and if Ruin kind of was trying to influence the Lord Ruler the same way he did with Vin by, like, imitating Reen's voice, maybe, like, depending on if he had someone, like, if Lutho was, like, a lover who was like, be more, you should be more merciful, and then Ruin, like, imitating that person's voice was whispering to Roshar in that moment, like, you should be merciful to them.
Yeah.
Like, to
Well,
keep them alive.
or if, Reshek had a Zane moment, like how Zane was like, oh, like Vin is the one person you never kill. And then Ruin is like, oh, well, of course I didn't tell you to kill her. Like, she's important for my plans. Like, similarly, Ruin might have been like, oh, I'm going to say, kill that guy, but I'm not going to tell you to kill Kelsier because I see potential.
Very possible. I feel like Ruin just has Roshar just so like strung up, and Ruin can play him like a fiddle.
Well, he's had 1,000 years to watch this person learn, like just how Reshek has learned about humanity and his ability to read it. Like Ruin's had 1,000 years just to focus on this one person. Normally, people's lives are so fleeting that Ruin like blinks and they're dead. So but he's had 1,000 years to get to know this guy. So,
and
he knows how to play him.
But yeah, the interesting complexity though is not just that, but also that Roshar gets a few things out on Ruin. That's probably the best part. That even though maybe Roshar can't recognize all of Ruin's influence, he knows the big things, and and Ruin can only like manipulate him so much.
Yeah, and he did manage, well, like with the trust, right?
Yeah.
And like that whole operation. And I also kind of wonder how they used to handle mining the 80, right? Like that's probably also something that, because we know these systems developed over time. So
that is all very good questions. Presumably you don't need to worry about mining the pits when not very many people are allomancers. But like, how would he wouldn't have access to Atium immediately, right?
Yeah.
Right? Because the other metals he can get pretty easily.
Yeah.
But man, that's actually really interesting to think about the Ascension. He comes out, but like he still has to ingest metals, just like everyone else.
Yeah.
You know?
No, what's another interesting thing I just thought of? You know how before we were talking about why he chose Allomancy over Farouk and me?
Mm-hmm.
Another obvious reason is having more Allomancers means more people to consume Atium, which is Ruin's body.
Oh, right.
So if the end goal is like consuming as much Atium as possible.
Yeah, of course.
Like there's only so much he can do himself personally. So having more more Allomancers.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. Well, but how much did the Lord Ruler foresee that? Like, because Preservation foresaw that. That was part of Preservation's plan.
And but the Lord Ruler is the one who designed like the trust and the Khandra, gathering it back, and
well, I just
like
yeah.
So he knew it was important and that he needed to hide it from Ruin.
Yeah, I just don't know if like a part of him going with Allomancy was because he specifically wanted the Atium burned away. But I think that is an interesting point, and we do know that the Lord Ruler knew a lot of things that many people wouldn't know. So Brandon can basically rationalize the Lord Ruler knowing most any particular factoid, and we'd just be like, yeah, I mean, I guess sure, why not? You know?
I really want a short story about a Silverlight Academy individual who like just studies the Lord Ruler as like one of the big figures in the Cosmere, right? In terms of reshaping a whole planet. Like I'm sure there's a Silverlight historian who that's like their thesis is on the Lord Ruler, and I'd love to like get their file and like all the things they.
That sounds awesome. That sounds amazing. We will talk about powers and mechanics sometime. It might not be next week, but sometime soon-ish. But I think we talked about a lot of cool stuff here, right?
Yeah.
We'll see you guys for that show. But you know what we have to do before we do that? It's time for Who's That Cosmere Character?
This character is from Roshar.
Menace.
Tien.
Talm.
Raise.
Void in drag on a horse.
It's time for Who's That Cosmere Character? Caw.
So, listeners, you know how the game is played. You send an email to whosthatcosmerecharacter@gmail.com with 5 clues and a character. I read each clue aloud to our panel of contestants, and after each clue, they get a chance to guess who's that Cosmere character.
You're so much better at this intro.
I
than
have
me.
practiced.
You do. I just don't care after a long episode. I'm like, whatever. Let's just see who's that Cosmere character. It'll be fun. I can like barely remember when people guess particular things. It's great. And it's just the two of us, so if it's not Scadrial, we're screwed, Matt.
All right.
Yeah.
Easy to stomach. We don't have Ian to fall back on.
This first one is from the Lumgul.
Okay, cool.
Clue 1. This character is wealthy.
Straff Venture.
It is not Straffventure.
Shani Lariel.
I
It
was
is not
like,
Channel Ariel.
you should definitely guess an Alariel, so I'm so happy you did, Matt.
Clue 2. This character has little to no experience with swords.
That's specific.
Renarin Colon.
It is not Renarin Colin.
I guess it depends. Because he's gained experience.
Yeah.
I would say he still has little by the time of Oathbringer. Kinda.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with Elend Venture.
It is not Elend Venture.
I don't think he was specifically trained in a sword.
Clue 3. This character self-deprecates. Can't help but feel like Ian would have gotten this by now.
Yeah.
Probably.
I was about to. This isn't my guess. I was
Okay.
about to say Raoden, but I'm
I know.
pretty sure he has some sword experience.
I think he does.
Yeah. So that's.
Wait. Shallan.
It is not Shallan.
I guess she's not wealthy.
Queen Eshin.
It is not Queen Eshin.
No one who cares about Aeonic is on pronunciations on this show. I know exactly what you said, Matt. Exactly who that was. None of this
Clue 4.
Ishin.
Clue 4. This character receives visitors.
What? I know this is just going to be really obvious when we get the answer.
Yeah.
Who self-deprecates? Right? Right, Matt?
Yeah. I don't know if he does, but Yeoman.
It is not Yeoman.
Yeah.
Yeoman doesn't self-deprecate.
I don't know. He's kind of humble because he's like, it's all about the Lord Ruler, right?
I
Like, he's
think
not
this is a
self-important.
Rosharan character.
Yeah. Oh. I'm gonna save that for my next guest.
He's wealthy. Right?
Mm-hmm. That was the first clue.
Wealthy, not trained in the sword, self-deprecating, and has visitors.
I was almost gonna say Elhokar, but he's obviously trained in the sword.
Yeah,
Like,
he's trained in the
very
sword.
obviously.
And a lot of the like female Rosharan nobility are like super like cocky.
Yeah. Maybe it's not Roshar.
Is it like one of Adeline's girlfriends or something?
I don't know. Give me clue 5.
Clue 5. This character died before the start of the book/series.
Well, I was gonna guess Queen Fen, but that
No.
tanks that guess.
Yeah, that tanks that pretty good.
Evie.
It is not Evie.
Oh. Yeah.
We're gonna lose Eric.
I know. Well, we knew this was gonna happen with just two of us.
Yeah. I will say all 5 of those clues work for Evie.
Yeah, you
Or
don't get
Evie.
bonus points for that, though.
Does
Yeah.
Evie self-deprecate?
I think so. Like she's like, oh, I don't know. Maybe she doesn't. Like she's like humble though, and like seems to have low self-esteem. Yeah, I feel like that's the key. That's like a key.
I feel like all the listeners are yelling out the answer right
Oh,
now.
I'm sure they are.
Hey, man.
Hey.
It's a lot easier to listen than go through the podcast and then be really tired at the end and do this. I don't know.
What's funny is I haven't been on for a while, and I keep wanting to like, because when I listen or watch, I look at like when you put the questions on the screen.
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
used to like looking at the questions and like visualizing.
I know.
And can't do that.
We don't get any of that. I add that all in post.
Yeah.
All of that's in post. And I don't know. It's kind of like public speaking, right? Like, oh, you imagine, oh, I'm going to do all these things. And then you get up on stage and then it's like, wow, that did not turn out how I expected that at all.
Because when I listen, I always like am screaming at you guys like, it's this one. But, yeah.
I don't know. Who is it?
Especially when it's Scadrial. Then I'm always like,
I know. Well, that's true.
But this might be Scadrial. And then I'm going to be eating my shoe.
Wait, Menace. Menace. I'm going to guess Menace. Okay.
Menace isn't rich.
Don't care. I don't want to get Menace wrong, okay? If I don't know, I'm going to guess Menace.
The answer is Light Song.
Okay, yeah. He wasn't trained in the sword. All right.
That's so tricky. Oh my, and like the dying before, because he did die.
I know, I like this one. I thought this was
that was good.
That's
I like
clever.
That. I like that.
And I like when there's hard clues, I like it to be a main character. Like I feel like hard clues about us like, but when it's that's a good one. Good
Especially
job.
like specifically he did not know how to use a sword, right? Like that was so super specific.
Did not know how to use a sword, and self-deprecating.
Yeah,
it was like a key part of his humor.
I like that. That was good. I like that one. That was good.
Yeah.
It's so hard when you don't give a world, you know?
Yeah. Light Song's a favorite. I love Light Song, so I'm kind of mad I didn't get
podcast.
That. Yeah.
Someday.
Do a Court of Gods podcast.
Can we come up with the rules of Terrachin on air?
Not sure.
Let's do a Terrachin podcast. That's
considering the only viewpoint character who played Terrachin did not know the rules himself and did not care about the rules. I'm guessing we won't be able to come up.
Terrachin's the game Light Song played, by the way.
We could do a game episode where we play that Rosharan game that Shallan plays with her like men. Yeah. Where you have like 10 cards.
Yeah, the guessing game. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we have the rules for that.
Also the one what's the game that the singers were playing? I don't remember what that was called either.
Oh, it was kind of like chess-ish. Yeah,
chess-ish,
Squires.
Yeah.
But it also had cards.
Yeah.
Cool, let's do the next one.
Alright. This next one was sent in by Simon Siravag. I don't know how to say that. Okay.
It's hard sometimes.
Okay. Clue 1. This character has something to prove.
Roshar.
It is not Roshar.
Alendi.
Is that your guess?
Yeah.
It's not Alendi.
I know it's not.
Clue 2. This character is invested.
Renarin.
It is not Renarin.
Vivenna.
It is not Vivenna. Clue 3. This character's mother has not been on screen.
Oh, that doesn't narrow it down at all. There's so many, like, unnamed mothers in the Cosmere.
Elend?
It is not Elend.
Raiden?
It is not Raiden.
I was like, wait, we've seen Eshin on screen. Oh, wait, no, but...
Eshin's his stepmom.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I would say Raiden fits. He has something to prove to people.
Yeah.
Clue 4. This character's parents were not from the same country.
Adolin?
It is not Adolin.
Ah!
Because Adolin's not invested.
Oh, crap, you're right. Damn it. You're right.
not from the same.
I already guessed Renarin, and I'm
I would
like,
also say Evie. We've seen Evie on screen.
Oh,
yeah.
All right.
So,
Alright,
okay,
fine.
mother not seen on screen. Invested. Parents not from the same country.
Not Arrow 1 Mistborn. Or Mistborn, really. Probably.
No countries. Oh, is it... I'm going to say the name wrong. Keys? Kai-Eyes?
It is not.
How do you say her name?
You mean Keen's
daughter. Am I saying the name wrong? What's her name?
Isn't
Casey?
it Casey?
Casey?
Whatever.
Yeah. Anyway, that's...
It is not her.
Okay.
Clue 5.
Oh, she's not invested.
Clue 5. Eric loves to scream out this name.
Menace?
No. So I thought for sure you'd get it. Come on.
Kenton?
Yes, it's Kenton.
Kenton!
Because I was
his
waiting
mom...
to read that one, and then you just to go Kenton into the mic.
Because Kenton's a dark side.
Yeah,
or
his mom's from Dark Side. Yeah.
Dark Side,
yeah. Right.
And he's invested.
It was 50-50 between Menace and Kenton, okay?
And Kenton has like the most to prove. Like I feel like he's the most angsty about proving himself of any Cosmere character.
Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
We got that one.
We did. And look, I'm not gonna get Menace wrong. If anything, I'm
Do you guess Menace every episode?
Nearly at this stage. If I don't know and it vaguely fits, I guess Menace. I've thought about this, that if I get a corgi, I'm gonna name him Menace.
But Menace, right?
No. He's gonna be young and full of energy as a corgi, and nothing like Menace, and not be very menacing either. And so it'll be a great fit. Or I could name the corgi Kenton. That's also possible. And then I can just call the dog over by saying Kenton, and that's the only way you can get the
get
dog
me my
boombox.
boombox.
We've considered this. We have considered this.
That would also require you to have a boombox around the house, which...
Look, the dog's not gonna know what... Maybe there'll be like a boombox little plush thing that he chews on, okay? Like, it doesn't need to be an actual boombox. Who has actual boomboxes anyway? Anymore.
No one these days.
No one! You have portable Bluetooth speakers. That's what you have. That's what
we're the opposite of White Sand era Taldane, where we've passed the time of the boombox.
We are exactly opposite in every way than White Sand. In every single way.
Know who could have boomboxes?
What?
80s era Scadrial.
That's true. Oh man. Oh, that's true. That is true.
They will be like right at boombox level technology.
See, you know what I thought you were gonna say? I thought you were gonna say something about Vax. Yeah. Vax has boomboxes. All right, guys. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Follow us on 17shard.com for all your news, discussion, theories, and fun that you could ever want. Join us in Discord, link below. Come follow us on Facebook, Twitter, SoundCloud. Leave us a review on iTunes. Subscribe on YouTube. Did I say that one already? I don't know. Whatever. And we will see you all next time.
Peace out.
Bye.
Sorry about Matt's terrible lag. His Canadian internet sucks for some reason. Grace and I were perfect. But your quality when you were here, Matt, was great. And your audio didn't cut out too much.
Yeah.
So, great.
Peace out. There I am.
Caw.